Hey guys, and welcome to the Class 3 build. If you haven't done the prerequisite yet, please watch that video. It's very light and very easy, so shouldn't take more than 10 minutes, plus a little propagation time. But it just sets the infrastructure for this one, which is really focused on SEO and GEO. So by the end of the day, what we're going to be doing is implementing what's called a dual web strategy. So basically, we're going to take the human website that you created in class one, the marketing site, and create a secondary website to all of those pages specifically for AI crawlers. I know if you guys know about Google's SEO practices, there's risk of getting penalized. So I'll walk through how to avoid that. And the idea here is that the AI will take your website from the AI pages and make you more citable and start presenting you to users who are searching for information about a given topic through ChatGPT or Perplexity or something like that. So from the prerequisite course, we've already installed our domain on Cloudflare and armed Claude with all of the MCP and logins. So we're good to start building. And we'll start building the second version of the website after I explain all the concepts. So there's a big debate, at least today, about GEO and what its relationship to SEO is. I'm not going to claim to be a GEO or SEO expert by any capacity. This is just the conclusion and way I think about it. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. But the way I look at it is that SEO serves as the foundation. When you have a website or a domain, Google is going to rank you against other websites based on keywords, search phrases, things like that. And obviously, the focus before AI has always been getting the highest rank possible, showing up on the first page of Google results, and making sure that you're quite findable. That doesn't really go away now that AI and GEO is around. The way I think about this is when you're searching for a query with ChatGPT or any of those AI providers, at the end of the day, it's using Google to do the search, and it's doing a search that uses a search engine, even if it's Bing or something else. So you still want to pop up towards the top of the results because ChatGPT is not going to go to the long tail of pages at the very end to try to find the answer. It's going to pick the ones that are ranked really highly. So the search engine optimization is the foundation, and the GEO builds off of that. So the higher you rank in SEO, the easier it is for the AI to find you and start reading your website, which is the goal at the end of the day. And then once it gets into your website, that's where the GEO comes into play of how do we make it so the ChatGPT wants to cite you and finds the information valuable and credible. So I'm not going to focus too much on the SEO build in this video. But generally speaking, SEO comes down to two levers that I primarily focus on. Again, I'm not an SEO expert. There's a lot that goes into it. But I find that these two have the biggest impact. The first one is backlinks. So the way to think about backlinks is what other websites are referencing your website. And so they're basically putting a link to your website on theirs. So the Google ranking will come through and see like, okay, this domain is credible and ranks really highly, and it's referring your website. So that means it must be a legitimate website and it should be promoted as such. But there's a lot of gaming the system that's developed over the years. So having a lot of backlinks doesn't automatically mean you're more credible. There's a relevancy check that Google will perform to make sure that everyone that's linking your site is actually relevant to your business. So you can't just go around and pick a lot of random sites. The other part of it is that it cares a lot about credibility and your expertise. So EEAT stands for expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and trust. And basically, I think of it as like a standalone authority of your website and credibility. So it's rating the expertise of the author or the company behind it. And there is a temptation here to want to automate your EAT with AI, but the more human this is, the higher ranked you will be. Google's getting really good at figuring out what AI content is and what is genuine and unique insights, and that's really what you want to publish here, more so than just broad strokes points of view. It's really looking for something that's accurate, that it's unique and novel. So the more you can promote that, which is a lot easier to do just handwriting it, the better you'll rank on it. So a common question is how do you improve these two levers? As far as the backlinks go, you can reach out to people who are writing blogs or guest posts or podcasts, any publication. If you can get a news article written about you, all of that is really legitimate and will really help your ranking. And so the more of those sites you can get talking about you, even if it's not direct linking, AI will favor you if you're just being talked about. So that helps, because if it goes to USA Today and sees that you're mentioned and you pop up in those results from USA Today, that helps your credibility as well. So it doesn't have to always be a direct link, but the more conversation you can have about your company, the better. And then for EEAT, like a lot of people write blogs. That's why you see a lot of blog content on sites that seem like they don't need blogs. And so that could be things about specific points of view, expertise, ways you solve problems, a comparison article of your product versus the competition. Even though you're comparing your product on your domain, ChatGPT and these AI companies aren't really going to penalize you for that, as long as you're honest and not saying that you're absolutely no fault and the best. Sober assessment is what counts here. So those are the two levers that you can use to improve these. So right here, I found this open source repo on GitHub that is a set of skills. You should definitely install them because we will use them throughout this class. But basically what it does is it helps you with the SEO of your website. We built the website in class 1, but it really wasn't optimized for SEO from a technical aspect. And it didn't really take SEO into consideration since it was mainly focused on the build of the website. So this set of skills will help with that, and they're really, really powerful and really valuable. I use them on all of my sites, and I've really improved both my SEO and GEO from them. And so you don't have to run it before we start the rest of the build, but it'll cut out a lot of work if you do, because then when we do it at the end, it only has to review the AI pages. So the commands that you want to run are the audit, the content, and if you have backlinks, it's worth taking a look at them. It's a little less important. But there are 25 skills in all, so it's definitely worth asking Claude what's in the repo, what all the skills are, what you should run. But at a minimum, run audit and content, and then it'll run a review of your site and give you recommendations on what to fix, and then we'll fix them for you. So you can technically set up your website to be optimized for SEO. And one thing to flag here, though, is you could do all the technical implementation of SEO that you want. There is a ceiling to that. Because at the end of the day, if no one's talking about your company, nobody's knows that your company exists, and there's not really any credibility signals for the ranking, being technically set up isn't going to really help you. But once traffic starts coming in, having that technical setup in place is only going to compound. So to go over the dual web setup and the reason we use Cloudflare here is that Cloudflare inserts what they call a worker in front of your website. And so what we've done is we've moved this router basically in front of both Versal and the Cloudflare pages version of the website. And so every visitor who comes in is going to encounter the worker, and the worker is going to decide which version of the website they see or block the person altogether. In the install, there is a document that controls which types of visitors go where. That is fully editable. I highly recommend you review it and make sure that it fits what you're looking for. I just provided a starting point for you guys, but it should be reviewed. So that's basically why we installed Cloudflare, is to implement this worker in front. So the three pieces that Cloudflare hosts that make this work are the DNS, which is basically the settings for which deployment they look at and which host they look at. The worker, which I mentioned, is the router. That's the whole thing that we're building, is this router and the pages. And the pages is basically the AI version of the website. And so what it is basically a really large text document. This marketing site that we build has a lot of HTML code, it has a lot of JavaScript, it has images, it may possibly videos, and a lot of stuff in there that when ChatGPT is looking for an answer, they're not going to be able to find it very easily because they have all of this code that they have to sift through in order to find it. And not only that, the marketing copy you have on your website probably doesn't answer the question very concretely or very directly. So it has to do a lot of inference to figure it out. And so these pages that we host specifically for the AI is basically more context and explanation. So that way the bot can go in, get a quick answer that is self-contained and easy to understand, and be able to pull that out really easily. So the thing that brings a lot of risk here in this setup is something called cloaking. And so Google punishes cloaking, as they should, in that if there are two versions of a website, Google marks that as inauthentic or fraudulent, if you will. And so it's really, really important that we keep the AI page as a twin of the human page. So make sure that all the content on the AI page matches the intent and the general vibe of the human page. And so one way that we make sure that those two things are linked is we put in a canonical link. And Claude will do this for you. It's just infrastructure setup. And so that basically tells anyone visiting the AI page, hey, this human version of the website is the actual canonical, and it's the one that takes priority. The other thing that we do is we do not include Google in the AI pages. Google and any of the ranking bots go to the human page only. The AI page is only for the small subset of bots that are specific to AI. So the best way to set that up and make sure that it doesn't have, or de-risk the mistakes that it can make, is that we pick out all of the AI bots, so ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, and we actively say, if it's one of these bots, send them to the AI page, and if it's not, send them to the human page. So that way, as new bots are created and encountered, we don't run into a situation where we're accidentally sending them to the wrong page. So this is how we get around the cloaking. As of August 2026, ChatGPT and these AI doesn't really care about this cloaking situation, and they're not going to punish you or anything for it. But this is something to keep top of mind as you read news and evolution of things, because it's easily possible that this goes the way that SEO did, where it becomes an issue. So it's just something to keep in mind over the course of time. So before we get into the build, one thing I want to introduce is plan mode. This is a really helpful mode for longer and bigger builds. The last two classes, as you guys know, has been a lot of let's just build X, Y, and Z, or I want to accomplish X, please do this for me, and then it'll go and execute it. But when we're setting up this dual web setup, it's going to have a lot of steps. And so we want to make sure that Claude goes through all of the steps and is well researched before it does it. And it's really easy to conceptualize this because we as humans do the same thing when we plan. It's if you were to try to execute a long task list without planning first, you're kind of taking educated guesses at what you have to do before the next step. And so you open yourself up to a lot of bugs and mistakes, and like you lose sight of the bigger picture of what you're trying to accomplish. And Claude does the exact same thing. And so what it does in plan mode is it's read only. The only document it can create is the actual plan itself. And it'll read your code base and figure out what it has to do to accomplish the task that you gave it. And it'll break it down into different steps. It'll audit it, make sure that all the steps are coherent, and that it will fully accomplish the goal. So this is one type of reference document. I highly recommend you get in the habit of keeping reference documents in your project. So the other one that I primarily use is an architecture document. And so what this does is in any project that's pretty complicated, or has a lot of moving pieces, or would take a really long time to understand the setup, I create an architecture document that is basically a summary of how everything is set up. Claude writes it for me. I honestly rarely look at what's inside of it, but what it does is it captures the structure, it captures design decisions you've made as well as why you've made them. If you make changes, it'll capture the decisions of why you made those changes. And if you encounter things that are tricky or pitfalls or bugs, it'll document those so you don't make the same mistake again. And so what the beauty of this is if you have questions about your setup or you want to implement a new feature or something to add, it doesn't have to go through your entire code base and rederive all of this information. You already have this summary document available that it can read and get an understanding of your whole project immediately and figure out where the focus areas are and where it should be looking. I highly recommend keeping reference documents for other purposes. So, for example, if you're building a product and you're brainstorming features, keep a reference document of all the features, and then you can prioritize them and knock them off over time. Or sometimes what I'll do is I'll have a half-baked idea that I don't want to forget. So I'll create a reference document of that half-baked idea. And as I keep thinking of new things that I want to add to it, I'll keep adding to it. And eventually I get it to a place over time where it's ready for a build or implementation or something like that. So just don't be afraid to create documents as like Scratchpad and brainstorming. Keep them organized, obviously, but they're really helpful for project management purposes. Let's see. So what we're going to do is we're going to plan the build with this prompt. And so you'll put the Claude code into plan mode and we'll paste in this prompt. And so before we hit go and I show you how to do that, I want to flag that what it'll do is it'll do all of this research and then come up with a plan. And what you want to do before you hit accept on the plan is you want to scan it and make sure that it makes sense, it's logical, it seems to be accomplishing the goal that you're going after. Don't worry too much about all the technicality of it. What's important is that it has the pieces and it seems like it'll hit a logical flow. You always want to have a verify step at the end to make sure that it works. And then based off of that build, you can fix bugs, iterate, improve, test, things like that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go into Claude Code, and then we're going to try to enter plan mode. And so you can do it just by hitting Shift Tab, or you can go down here and select plan mode specifically. And you'll know you're in it because you'll have this blue box around, and blue means plan mode. Okay, so while it starts planning, I'm going to walk through the steps of what we would expect this plan to have. So the first step is building the infrastructure. Right now, the human version of your website is just at the top of the folder list. But what we want to do is create some scaffolding around it so that way they are housed in different folders and Versal can pick up one folder and Cloudflare pick up another folder, and so that they can coexist together. So that's the general scaffolding we want to put in place. It'll also add a couple files here. The robots.txt is a rulebook for the crawlers. So basically, this is what your worker references when it decides who goes where. It's like a guest list sheet in front of a club or something like that. It'll look at it and say, okay, you can come in, you can't, you're going to go over there, or you're going to go to the robot version. You can block crawlers with it. So if you want certain crawlers to not see your site or not see certain pages, you can put them in there. Like I said, I'm giving you a baseline one. I highly recommend you review it before you actually ship and install this. Yeah. And then the other one is the sitemap. This is basically just a directory of all of the pages that you have on your website. And this is really useful because this is what Google uses to figure out what to index and where it is. And the last thing it'll install are security hardening headers that Cloudflare uses. The next thing it'll do is it'll write an AI version of your website. And so it'll create one page for every page that you have, so it's parallel. But basically what it does is it takes all the marketing copy and starts expanding on it and creating a question and answer format. It creates paragraphs that are self-contained that answer potential questions. And the way that this basically works is that it follows a GEO content guide, which I provide for you. This content guide was based off of this blog from iPullRank, which is an agency for SEO, among other things. And so they write highly technical and really well-researched blogs. And so what I did was I pulled this one on how SEO can prepare for future search, as well as Introduction to Relevance Engineering Framework. And I had Claude write a best practice documents based off of both of these. Like I said, highly researched, highly technical. You don't really have to understand the content in there because it's pretty dense, to be completely honest. But basically what it does is what it says the best practices are in a super summary version are you want to have paragraphs within a certain word length that are self-contained. So that way ChatGPT can come in and pull out the full answer as a small paragraph and get an understanding really quickly the answer to a question. Also, like I said, you want to clear out all the code that isn't useful to find the answer. And that makes sense because if ChatGPT is rushing to find an answer, it doesn't want to spend an inordinate amount of time filtering through all of this code. It needs to get back to the user pretty quickly with an answer for a good user experience. So it's going to prioritize websites where it's really easy to find the answer really quickly. There are a bunch of other things that it recommends, but those are the really big ones. So conceptually, the way to think about it is you're writing self-contained paragraphs that answer common questions that your service or business may provide. so that it can go back to the user and say, hey, I found this company that does exactly what you're asking. You should take a look at them, which is the ultimate goal here. Step 3 is we're going to put it on Cloudflare. So there's going to be a step here where we need to create the pages on Cloudflare, and we're going to hook it up to GitHub, this same repo, so that way every time we push it automatically gets updated to Cloudflare and we don't really have to think about it. And then the worker is going to be installed by Claude, so that will handle all the routing. And Claude will also test to make sure that both versions are live and the routing works. Okay, so now that the plan's done, you want to definitely review it, and you can see up here we have the context. It goes through all the documents that it researched and what it found. It even has a nice little diagram here, which is basically the same of what I showed you on the slide. With the worker showing the wayfinding for human and for the AI site. And then here's just a bunch of files that it's going to create. Don't stress too much about it. It's just for your own knowledge. But down here is where we start getting into the build order and what's going to be contained. So it gives you a brief walkthrough. And then further down here, is where you'll start auditing the steps that it's going to take. So you can see up in the top here, it even says infrastructure. So this is all the scaffolding step, and then it's going to go through the actual bot pages, along with the verification of the actual build and making sure that it's deployed and routing correctly. Okay, and so once everything looks good, you'll just hit the auto accept button and it'll start building the whole plan. Okay, so now that it's done, this is the part we have to do some setup in Cloudflare. So we need to actually create the pages in Cloudflare, which gives us directions right here how. So we'll go to the workers and pages, which the easiest way to find that is to go to search and just literally type workers and pages, and it'll pop up and you just click that. And then from here, you're going to want to go to create application. And this new UI, they change the UI all the time, but the UI is going to dump you in workers. What we actually want is pages. So what you'll do is you'll go down under all of these and just click the pages actual link here. And this will get you in the right place. They change the UI a lot, so if it changes, just ask Claude what the new setup is. But you want to hook it up to your GitHub repo, the same one that houses your website. And basically what we're going to be doing is configuring it to pull from the main branch, which is our production branch. But more importantly, we're going to be making sure that it pulls from the LLM folder. This is the folder that houses all of our bot pages. And make sure all the other fields match what the table says, but this LLM one is what's important. So as you can see, these are all the bot pages that we have, and this is what Cloudflare is going to be looking for. So once you type it all in, you just hit the next button and it'll start deploying. So now that it's deployed, the one thing Claude asks for is the address of all of these pages. So you just copy that link, move over to Claude and paste it in, and it will fully update and take care of the rest for you. Okay, so now that it's done, it's run all the verification. And as you can see in this little table here, it's run them as different crawlers. So most importantly, it ran as Googlebot and it got the human version of the site. So this is what prevents our cloaking. And then it ran as the other ones and they got the appropriate versions of the site. So now that everything's installed and set up, similar to class one, this initial pass is just the setup and infrastructure. It's not really what you want to ship to production. So we want to fill it out a little bit more, make sure that we're answering questions that are currently missed, and really cover a lot more bases. So what we're going to do is we're going to run SEO content brief for your main domain, and then add a little direction that basically says, I want to fill in the AI side for questions that we're not currently answering. It may add a couple or suggest add a couple websites, or not websites, pages to cover different bases. It's up to you whether you want to do that or not and what the structure of that is. All it's really doing is, in that case, is trying to create more surfaces that an AI can go find common questions that it may encounter. You can decline to add more pages and just put it all into the landing page. There is a risk that there's too much text for it to filter through, so just proceed with caution. But I will say, in general, don't really overthink this, because what we're doing is we're just building a baseline. You should be revisiting your SEO and your GEO every 90 days or so, just to check in on the performance, see what iteration you need to do. It's an evolving practice as things are constantly changing. People's search behaviors change, you offer different services. So it's things that you really want to keep focused and on top of periodically. And then also what will inevitably happen is some pages will rank really well, while others will not. So then you'll run a diagnostic of what are these pages doing that this one isn't, and why are they ranking so well. So this is typical SEO and GEO maintenance. And so what will happen is the content brief will generate a set of recommendations. And then what you do is you just tell it to follow the GEO content guide, which honestly it probably already knows that. But what it'll do is it'll fill in those recommendations, making sure that it fits the structure of GEO. And then once it's all done and built, then you'll run this SEO GEO command. And basically what that does is it assesses the citability of your AI pages. Candidly, this command assumes you do not have a dual web setup, but because we do, it'll identify that pretty quickly, and so your score will automatically be a little bit higher. But it'll fix anything that is an issue, and so it's always a good review step. Okay, now that we have all of our AI pages filled out and robust, what you want to do is rerun this SEO toolkit. So we ran it on the human version of the site, so that should be squared away. We don't really have to worry about it. But running it again here will make sure that your AI versions are technically sound. You should definitely run the schema command because it makes sure your structured data is set up. I think it's a little less important because only certain domains really use it, but still a good practice to do just to cover the base. And so run these as a last pass. If your audit score is in 90 out of 100, I think that's the scale, you're probably fine and you can just ship it. And so once you ship it, then you can just start seeing the AI crawlers show up. Cloudflare has a really good dashboard to show you which ones are coming, how often, and things like that. No real reason to pay for an AI, AEO, GEO tracker. Cloudflare does a really good job. But not only that, you guys learned how to build your own dashboard in class 2. And so the homework for this class is to implement more data sources into that same dashboard. The ones you're going to want to use here are Google Search Console. This gives you a lot of analytics on what people are searching and how you're ranking in that search. What's really important to do here as well is to not only claim your property if you haven't already, but submit your sitemap. Every time you submit your sitemap here, it will notify Google that there are changes and it should come and re-index you instead of you sitting around hoping it finds you at some point. So it's more of a proactive notification to Google of, hey, you need to rank and relook at some of these pages. The really powerful data source, though, is this data for SEO. I will say this is the one paid thing that I've recommended to you guys, but it's a $50 prepaid minimum just to get access to it. But each API call is fractions of a cent. So this $50 will last you literally months. So don't stress out too much about it. I've been using it for 6 months and I'm still not halfway through my allotment. But basically what this does is it has a really rich data set of all SEO metrics for your domain and your business and competitors. And so for the dashboard purposes, it's really useful because it'll tell you how you're ranking. It'll tell you what people are searching for and how you're ranking relative to those searches. It'll give you a keyword breakdown of what you should be ranking for and what you want to be qualifying for and what your competitors are doing. And so for the dashboard, just like we did in class 2, you give these 2 data sources to Claude and then you start ingesting them into your database and then build the dashboard you already built to include this new information. How do you want to ingest this information? What information is available? How do you make decisions off of this information? And not only that, because you're doing it at a point where SEO and GEO is freshly installed, you can see how it paces over time and whether this is getting you more of the traffic that you were looking for. This dashboard is what's going to help you iterate on it at the 60 or 90 day mark. So it's really, really powerful for tracking organic traffic to your site. And Claude will help you set up all of that. You can even mark in your charts the day that you installed it so you can see the different points in time where you iterate and see the changes in momentum. But where this really becomes powerful as a data source is when you're trying to figure out what should be on your AI pages, or if you write blogs, what you should be writing about. The SEO set of skills in the open source repo uses just public searches to come up with all of the answers. But if you arm them with this data for SEO and say, hey, run this, but you have this data source that you can use, it uses the same methodology, but now it has really rich and informational data to even stronger base the conclusions off of. And so you're going to get a much more powerful output with a lot better basis for analysis than almost everyone using the repo normally. And then you can really tailor your website, your blogs, your keywords, your marketing copy, everything based off of what's happening from this data source. And that should really supercharge the way that you're being found and move you up the rankings a lot faster. So with that, your site is fully built in an AI optimized version. And as a human going in would have no idea, but now ChatGPT and all Perplexity and all these AI can find you a lot easier, and hopefully you'll start getting a lot more organic traffic from being cited from them. Keep working it, keep working through the 90 days. It's an iterative process, but it shows up pretty quickly, and it's exciting. It works really well. After this, the 3 classes I've just given you were for website and performance tracking. Class 4 onwards really shifts into the business operations side with building automations, figuring out what tasks you do consistently and repeatably that you can offload to Claude to do for you. And then eventually building agents so that way you can start running your business more efficiently, offload a lot of the busy work, and really focus on the stuff that you need to focus on.